Today I want to talk to you about your memories. Some of you will have really vivid memories. You'll remember pretty much everything. Some of you will have bits and pieces with lots of holes in it, and some of you will have the feelings but you can't remember anything. And that's when you were in the state of dissociation where you kind of checked out and you weren't actually there, and then when it was finished you came back in. Either way, it's sort of frustrating. The vivid ones are good because you actually have clarity, but they tend to haunt you. The ones where you can't find the bits and pieces are really annoying because you know some more happened, you can't get it. And the ones where you just have the feeling, I think, are the worst ones because you know it, you feel it, but you can't remember it. And I think the worse the abuse is, the more we block it out. On the good note, though, as you start working on your stuff and releasing the feelings, sometimes the memories come up. So you'll start to remember this or remember that, or you'll see a picture in your head, or you'll smell something and then you'll remember. You'll also have more dreams, and your memories can come through your dreams. I had very little real memory. I knew it, I felt it, but I didn't remember it. And I had a few people around me who were quite intuitive, and they picked up on stuff and said things to me, and then yes, I think that happened, this happened, that happened. And I had things around my body that were doing weird stuff, so I realised that's where the abuse had been. The other thing is that I did was I got all the old photos, particularly with the childhood stuff, and got all my old photos and started looking at them. Just generally looked at the places I lived, looked at what my sister and I were doing, photos of that and the family photos, just to sort of get me back there and to remember. A few times I went back to the old house here, and one time there was nobody home, so I walked around the house because it was vacant, and another time I just sat out the front and looked at the house and walked around the streets to try and get myself to remember, because the more you remember, the more real it is, the easier it is for you to really cope with, because you remember it and you're okay because you can remember it. You don't think you're going completely nuts. This will make you feel a little crazy sometimes because you can't really put it on the table. You can't actually prove it. Like, you can walk into the kitchen and see the cake and the cake's there and it's tangible, but a memory isn't tangible. And memories can get skewed as well. You can remember things incorrectly at times, and that will actually give you that doubt. But if you think you've been abused and you do have some vague memories, I would say 99% you have been, because no one chooses it to be this way, because it's really complicated and it makes your life very, very awkward. Would disbelieve yourself. If you have a sibling who's been abused in your family and you were living in the same address, I would suggest that you've had some kind of abuse too. They'll often single out a child, but then the others will get different forms of the abuse. And you could have also had what I call spectator abuse, where you saw things happen, which is pretty horrible when you can't protect your brother or your sister or your mum. These things will also be memories for you, where you remember what dad did, or him hitting mum, or him pushing the little kid over. You'll remember those things like little flashes. The memories help you to know where to go to fix it. That's why the memories are good. So then you know that this happened, that happened, this happened, and that happened. Then you can go and fix that. You can do your writing. You can talk to your counsellor, your therapist if you have one. And you can also know how those things made you feel. And by knowing how you felt, then that made sense. People can contribute to your memories too. If you have people in your family who remember events and things that happened, and some people are really good and they're forthcoming and will tell you, yeah, your mum told me that he used to hit her. That's why she always had those bruises. She didn't really knock herself. These people will actually give you some foundation, so your memories actually have some credit in them. Other times your siblings can help you. If you are in an adult relationship, you probably will remember a lot of it, even though you might blank out, and other people will fill that in too. Make sure that you try and get your memory box more and more and more memories in it, and write them down, what you can remember. The writing's good. You write them down. I remember this, I remember that. And even if it's vague, write it down. It's like something weird happened. We went to that shack. I remember it. Sometimes there are physical manifestations too with young children. If there's sexual abuse, of course, they'll often have urinary tract infections or bruising there. If the person's hitting the other person, there will be bruises and black eyes and different things like that, and broken bones sometimes. Sometimes these children end up in hospitals with, walked into a door, rubbish. So you might have that as well, which will verify what you're actually getting. I often think the more we are open to allow ourselves to remember, because remember, we've tried not remember it and just move on and carry on and not remember it. But the more we open ourselves to that, the better it is, and the more memories come flooding in. I would just remember stuff. I would just be somewhere and something happened and I'd remember it, and then I could acknowledge it and then go and work on letting go of how I felt about it and do my writing. Abuse is really bad and it's a lot of work to clean it all up, and you'll get really angry with your abusers because they made so much work for you. I used to get really cranky because I didn't do anything and now I've got to do all this work, but I saw it as a good thing to do and cleaning myself up and also getting rid of it, to basically get rid of it, and facing it is getting rid of it. Sometimes people will remember things that have happened to you, but they won't tell you. They don't want to hurt your feelings or upset you. But if you're very clear with them and say to them, look, I already know it. If you remember anything, just tell me. It's just going to help me get better. They'll see it from a different angle. And also, people will remember differently within families. If people have blocked it out really well, or maybe it wasn't so much part of what they grew up with mum or dad, they will actually argue with you that it didn't happen. And that's true, but because in a way it didn't happen to them, and when it did happen to them, they weren't there, they just dissociated, so they didn't remember anything. But if you think it's happened to you, it probably has. And sometimes it'll take people a lifetime. They won't deal with it until they're in their 60s or 70s to actually go and look at it. It's a little bit like when those people come back from war and they can't deal with it, they just shut it away. Well, we do the same thing. And if we want to continue having relationships with people too, it's going to be pretty damn hard if you remember everything that mum and dad did to you, and then you have to go and have a Sunday lunch. So there's that as well. There comes forgiveness in the end. It takes a long time to forgive them, but once you get rid of the anger and the hurt and see that they were flawed individuals who damaged others because they in themselves were damaged, you will come to a place of forgiveness. But don't expect yourself to do that at the beginning. That sort of comes later on, and it comes in bits and pieces as well. So you might forgive one section and be all right with it, then to find another section comes up and you're not all right with it, and then you have to re-forgive them for the next section. The memories are powerful. You can ask yourself to release them now that it's safe. Some people also use hypnotism. They go and get hypnotized to try and get it, or rebirthing or breath work. And you might want to look at those things as well if you're ready. I found that if you've bunkered it down pretty hard, even with hypnotherapy, it'll take a while or can't or won't come out, because we've told ourselves we're never ever going to go back there. Never ever going to go back there. I'm never ever going to suffer like that again, particularly the childhood stuff. So then it's really hard to pull it out and I suppose re-suffer in a sense, but it's really worth it if you can remember. And the memories will come fast and quick, and you'll see the pictures. You might even start remembering what happened in the house to other people before you can deal with the stuff that happened to you. And that's okay, because it all builds like a picture, and then you know the reality on what's happened. So try and remember things if you can. If you already have a good memory, I would write it all down, what you can remember, get a compile it so that you can go back and have a look at it. And then the reason that's good is because when they went to the park and he took you out the car and gave you hiding, you would have had feelings about that. And sometimes your parents will inadvertently tell you that. My father told me that they took me to a park when I was 4 and gave me a hiding in the park because they were in a flat situation with a lot of flats, and they couldn't hit me because everyone would hear that they was sort of beating me. And I always think to myself, yeah, that wasn't the only time, honey, but it was good for me because he actually told me what they actually did, and I could realise that that was part of their way that they treated me, particularly him. Sometimes your abuser will actually tell you stuff without even realising they have. So go, find your memories, see if you can get some more, and that'll help you to clear it out and get better. So I'm sending you lots of love, lots of light.